Good afternoon or evening, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy Wednesday to you. We've got a major winter storm getting ready to impact the mid-southern United States and to the eastern seaboard. We are beginning to see more winter weather advisories, watches, and warnings posted from the southwest, including Texas, all the way over into the Carolinas. I expect that to extend eastward here as what the Weather Channel has called Winter Storm Cora begins to take shape here. So we're going to take a look at the latest forecast, and I'm going to focus primarily on this storm system, although my thoughts and prayers are with everybody in Southern California dealing with these incredible wildfires with incredibly strong Santa Ana winds. We'll talk about that a little bit here as well. Current temperatures show the cold, especially across the northern United States, but it's cold all the way down into Texas as temperatures remain at or below 40 degrees across much of the country here. This entire part of the country is below 40 here. And outside of Florida and Southern Cal and Arizona, we continue to have well below average temperatures here. And that cold air is going to stay in place here for the rest of this week as our winter storm begins to take shape. Right now, you can see a good chunk of the country has colors on it, and unfortunately, that's not a good thing. You can see a winter storm warnings now in play across northeastern Texas, southeast Oklahoma, much of Arkansas, northern Mississippi, and western Tennessee. I'm going to zoom in just to be able to give you a better view of that. DFW is now in a winter storm warning. I've seen that schools are now closed for tomorrow and possibly Friday as well. Little Rock is under this as well. Memphis is under the winter storm warning. Even Cape Girardeau, Missouri, under the winter storm warning. Now, OKC is under an advisory, meaning the worst will stay south and east of you. Same for Tulsa, Oklahoma, but we are going to have impacts here as well. And looking farther to the east, we are now beginning to see these warnings as well as we see this winter storm watch in northern Alabama, middle and eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, and northern Georgia, including the Atlanta area. And this will likely get upgraded to a winter storm warning as well. It only would make sense that it does that. We do have freeze warnings in parts of the southeast, farther south, I-10 on southward here. And then we also have advisories in place over parts of Kentucky and southwestern Virginia. I do expect we're going to see a winter storm warning across much of this area here pretty soon. We have wind advisories over parts of New England and the Northeast, and we also have advisories with unsettled weather here, snow coming down hard at times in parts of West Virginia and the Appalachians, as well as over the snow belts. Also looking at portions of Missouri here, St. Louis, again, right after the storm you just had over the weekend, lower Illinois, southwest Indiana, again, we have winter weather coming here. Same goes for Kansas. So we are not getting a break in the winter here. And I've talked about this here for a few weeks now, that this was going to be a pretty unsettled period here across this portion of the country. Right now, I'm showing you the water vapor image. You can see where our storm system is, and it's spinning and spinning and spinning here over northwestern Mexico. It's sending moisture in from the Pacific across Texas, and as this translates eastward, we're going to see what's called an overrunning event, where moisture runs up and over a colder air mass. And so we're going to see different precipitation types depending on where you live, but probably for many folks, a wintry mix. Now, eventually, this system will pick up more juice from the Gulf of Mexico and lead to a heavy rain event across the Gulf states here. We're not going to see a big severe weather event this time like we saw with the last couple of storms, but we are going to see more heavy rainfall. Now, you can see kind of on the corner of this image here, and let me move myself down here. Let's just get this stupid out of the way. You can see here in the last few frames here that with this strong northeasterly flow moving through the mountains of Southern Cal, the water vapor image is actually picking up on wildfire smoke here. I know it's moving very quickly, but it is really bad there, unfortunately, and we're seeing major fires around Pacific Palisades, farther up to the north and east, closer to Glendale and Pasadena, and even off to the south and east there. Just incredible winds fueling these fires. And models are indicating that winds are going to stay very strong tonight and tomorrow in many of the same places here. LA proper will not see the strongest winds, but unfortunately, it's going to ramp back up here early in the day tomorrow. Right around sunrise, wind speeds may exceed 70 miles per hour in these higher elevations. And with the very low amount of fuel in place, the very dry air mass in place, this is not going to help the situation. It's just going to make it worse. The backdrafts continue to get worse. We're putting more gas on the fire here, unfortunately, with these wind speeds. And right through about 10 or 11 o'clock tomorrow night, we continue to have wind gusts that may exceed 80 miles per hour. Malibu's down in here. You're going to see gusts over 50 miles per hour around Topanga State Park here. And, Santa Monica here, wind gusts will still get up to 40 miles per hour through about midnight tomorrow night. And then we are going to see things slowly improving, but it's going to take us into the morning on Friday before that can finally happen. So we're going to be fighting these fires, unfortunately, for a lot longer here. Now we're going to focus the rest of the video on the south and the winter storm that we're going to be dealing with here the next few days. And the latest National Weather Service key messages indicate a lot of folks are going to have moderate to worse impacts, especially Oklahoma, North Texas, Arkansas, and Tennessee, but surrounding states as well. There'll be impacts into Virginia. You can see there's going to be some ice in the Carolinas. There'll be ice in central and southwest Texas. And our heaviest band of snow is expected to fall from northeast of Dallas to about Memphis and across northern Mississippi. That's where our chance for 6 to 8 inches of snow or more is going to be greatest. We're going to take a look at the NAM model first. We're going to show you what it's showing, and this goes out 60 miles, or 60 hours, not miles, covers most of the U.S. and surrounding parts of Canada. And outside of the cold instability across the Northeast, you can see there's two separate features. A northern branch feature that's moving through the Dakotas into Minnesota, bringing some lighter snow, kind of a clipper type system here through tomorrow. And then a moisture system here that picks up energy from the Gulf of Mexico and forms a surface low just off the coast here of Texas. And I can't access my tools. But here you can see low pressure forming. So we've got this boundary here, another fresh cold air mass coming down. Here's our cold front right here. This is the meteorological symbol here. And then we've got low pressure here, which is going to bring some heavy rain to the Gulf coastal section. And here's our warm front, which is going to struggle to move inland. So the cold air is locked in, and as a result, we see a wintry mix in here, and then a band of snow breaking out later in the day across this portion of the Mid-South and the Southern Plains. As we move this along in time, you will see that this system is going to get larger. It's going to pick up more moisture, and precipitation rates come down harder later tomorrow night as it advances across Oklahoma, Northeast Texas, and Arkansas. You'll also see rain is going to pick up in Louisiana here by Friday morning. This area, as it moves into the colder air mass, will bring a wintry mix and some ice over parts of Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. And afternoon, it's going to move into the Carolinas as well, and by evening into the eastern Carolinas. Now, we're not talking a major snowstorm for most of North Carolina or South Carolina. We're dealing with a sloppier storm that will start out as some snow, but as the warmer layer aloft works in, this is going to transition to sleet pretty quickly tomorrow night and freezing rain as well. The challenge is going to be where that happens and how quickly it happens. But right now, all indications are that most of the snow is going to fall west of the Appalachians and maybe across western North Carolina and across the rest of the Mid-South, even lower Missouri and Kentucky. But as this spreads eastward here, we're going to have mixing challenges as low pressure tracks up the coast. At the same time, you've got this cold air coming into the Northeast, so there's going to be a duel that goes on here over the next few days. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take you region by region here and give you a lot more specifics than what I just showed you here. So we're going to start in Texas, and we're going to see light precipitation breaking out by morning tomorrow. This is 5 a.m., light freezing rain or sleet around Abilene. Eventually that moves into the DFW area around mid-morning, and into North Texas by the end of the morning, and into southern Oklahoma as well. It's going to be going back and forth in DFW here between sleet and then freezing rain, and then liquid cold rain where it's above freezing, and then eventually a switch over to sleet and snow later at night. A few days ago, it looked like this transition zone was going to be farther south, maybe towards Waco, Killeen, and Tyler. Now it looks like the battleground is going to be right along the southern part of the DFW metro and even into Northeast Texas and into the Arklatex. And south of that boundary, I could see how we got very little snow, places like Tyler and Shreveport. But north of where that changeover happens, it's going to come down hard across parts of Oklahoma. And here's a look at the expected amount of snow here in northeastern Texas. And you can see on the NAM model, it's not nearly as impressive as what some of our ensembles showed. About 3 inches in DFW, but closer to 6 around Gainesville and Sherman, 7 to 8 in Paris. And then you get up into Oklahoma, and those amounts continue to climb to maybe as much as a foot of snow. Now we're going to transition this northward here into Oklahoma first and then Arkansas. And you'll see for Oklahoma, there could be a little bit of wintry mix as well in the morning tomorrow. Same for the panhandle of Texas around Childress and between Amarillo and Elk City. But primarily, this will be snow that far west, and it expands northward here by the afternoon into southern Kansas. The heaviest of it stays east of I-44, and it will be heavy tomorrow night before moving out in the morning on Friday. Totals here in Oklahoma are going to be more expansive, especially in the southeastern part of the state. You will see we could be dealing with as much as 14 inches near the Arkansas border that falls. Not all of that is going to accumulate. It may be more like 8 or 9 or 10 inches that actually sticks, but quite a bit will fall. And then back in the panhandle of Texas, we could see a few inches as bands of heavier snow will set up as well here tomorrow and into tomorrow night. But OKC and Stillwater could get by here with less than 2 inches of accumulating snow. Let's take this eastward into Arkansas here. I am doing this state by state here. I don't do this too often, but this is a substantial storm for this part of the country. We're dry tonight. Tomorrow morning, okay, and then we start to see things heading downhill around lunchtime, around places like Neenah and eventually Hot Springs and Russellville. Little Rock, this will start early in the afternoon if the NAM is correct, as snow. It may briefly start as rain, but primarily it's going to be snow. And then we start to see mixing along and south of Interstate 30 here. Pine Bluff over to West Helena, and Hot Springs will be dealing with, unfortunately, some sleet and freezing rain. The sleet is purple, and the freezing rain here is red. As we move this along here, you can see it is still primarily rain for the Delta region. It just had the tornadoes the other day, but it will eventually go back over to snow, but it may be too little too late here in places like Greenville, Mississippi, and Oxford here. Memphis, on the other hand, should be primarily snow from this system, and the Ozarks, of course, will be all snow from this system. It will end in the western part of Arkansas here by lunchtime, but it may take until mid to late day for that to happen in northeastern Arkansas and probably until evening across western Tennessee. Here's a look at snow totals further east, and you will see this is where the bigger spots are going to be. Mena over to Hot Springs, Little Rock, Conway, Searcy, Arkansas, all could pick up 6, 7, maybe even as much as 10 inches of snow on the ground, and maybe more than that can fall here, up to 14 to 15 inches. Northern Arkansas will get a good amount of snow out of this, but I don't think your impacts will be nearly as bad as central Arkansas. And the same could be said here for northern Mississippi versus the rest of Mississippi. But unfortunately, we're not just talking about snow here. We're also talking about ice in this region. And you can see here, there is the potential for a few tenths of an inch of ice along the I-30 corridor and into northern parts of Mississippi. I do want to show you Missouri and Kansas real quick. Here's Kansas real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because this isn't going to be nearly like what we saw last week, but some light to moderate snow Thursday afternoon, Thursday night, moving out Friday morning here in Kansas. And in Missouri, we are going to be dry tomorrow, but towards the evening, we will see a light to moderate snow breaking out in the southwest, and then eventually spreading into St. Louis around midnight and into southern and central Illinois overnight. And it will snow hard in some places here for a few hours, but generally a moderate snow for about 8 to 12 hours before things wrap up in the afternoon. This is not really your storm, but certainly it is going to put down some accumulation of snow here. And you'll see the totals real quick, starting with Kansas here, about an inch or so in Wichita, a few in Pittsburgh, less than an inch around KC, and minor amounts as well across Nebraska and Colorado. Shifting east into Missouri and Illinois, higher amounts along I-44, a few inches expected, maybe as much as 5 or 6. Cape Girardeau, Carbondale, St. Louis, a few inches expected. Springfield, an inch or 2 expected. So we'll have more snow on top of what we got, which will probably get old here pretty soon. When we shift into Tennessee and Kentucky, this is where things are going to be pretty interesting here, especially in Tennessee. You'll see it's quiet through tomorrow. And then at night, we start to see things moving in overnight tomorrow night after midnight. And it could snow pretty hard here in southern and western Tennessee before daybreak. Nashville, the roads could get pretty bad after 6 or 7 in the morning. Knoxville and Chattanooga, that would be maybe a little bit later. And then Johnson City, we are going to see significant snow for the afternoon hours. It'll continue for at least 12 hours, maybe even a little bit more. So this does have some good potential with it. And then we're going to see some mixing across southern parts of Tennessee and northern Alabama here. That mixing will start in the afternoon near that border, the southern border of Tennessee, and eventually it makes its way up here to the part of I-75 here that runs from Chattanooga to Knoxville, and especially points eastward here. There's a bit of a warm layer that can transition this to ice. Kentucky, this is all going to be snow for you. Southern Indiana and Ohio, this will all be snow. And West Virginia, I suspect this is all going to be snow as well. Here's a look at the totals. We're going to start with Illinois and Indiana, then move south and east. And light snow around Chicagoland, an inch or so in South Bend, but more over the I-70 corridor. And we're not going to see what we saw last weekend, but a few inches can be expected. Locally, some higher amounts will be possible. Michigan could see a little bit of snow in here as well, which I will show you here. But for the most part, the moisture is going by well to your south. Now, Detroit could get a few inches of snow. That would be kind of nice to see there. But as we get farther south into Kentucky and Tennessee, this is where amounts are going to be higher than what we're used to. A few inches in Nashville, 4 or 5 in Jackson. When we get down to places like Rutherford County, 5, 6 inches of snow. Florence, Alabama, Muscle Shoals, we could see between 3 to 6 inches of snow. And then heading east of Cookeville towards Knoxville and Oak Ridge, a few inches expected. When we get to the Smokies, I think we're going to see locally higher amounts over a foot, but there will be some ice to talk about in this area as well. Kentucky, a few inches, but again, you can see how this is kind of erratic, how the snow is going to actually break out. Ice is going to be another problem that we have to stress about here over southern Tennessee. We may see a tenth or two of ice around Chattanooga, and more so in southwestern Oklahoma or North Carolina, not Oklahoma, including places like Franklin, Silva, Cullowhee, Murphy, Cherokee, maybe even Asheville and Hendersonville. So it's going to get messy here, but primarily snow in this part of the country. All right, we're going to take you into the southeast. It's all rain for the most part in Louisiana, as you can see here, but we may see a little bit of ice briefly tomorrow afternoon, but pretty much rain here as the afternoon wears on and even into the nighttime. This will all quickly move east, and it will be dry and colder for the remainder of Friday. But Mississippi and Alabama, we're going to run into some challenges north of I-20 here. You can see here primarily rain, but some sleet could mix in here, and it may be cold enough for a little bit of ice here overnight tomorrow night in Tuscaloosa, Montgomery, and Columbus. Maybe even closer to Dothan and Enterprise. We could see a little bit of icing here, but primarily a rainstorm for you. Northern Mississippi, though, this is where things are really going to get bad, and eventually we see that in northern Alabama before daybreak on Friday. And it continues into the morning on Friday and even into the early to mid-afternoon before things finally wind down here and things start to dry out. So this is going to be a pretty longer duration period storm here. Not as bad as what we saw last winter, but certainly still a significant winter storm. Here's a look at what we're expecting as far as ice goes. And you can see the totals do come up, not just in Mississippi, but more so in northeastern Alabama and around the Atlanta, Georgia area. And a lot of people obviously live in this region here, and these amounts of ice could be pretty substantial. Over a quarter of an inch starts causing the power outages. Half an inch starts causing even bigger issues. Moving into Georgia and the Carolinas here, and yes, I'm taking my time with this because this is pretty important. You will see here that unfortunately not really a big snowstorm here. It's a little bit of snow, a little bit of sleet in the morning, and then a transition over to a significantly dangerous period of freezing rain and sleet here through the late morning and afternoon hours in Atlanta. It may go over to just above freezing in Atlanta and Athens and Augusta, but it's going to be close here. And unfortunately, this moisture doesn't just go away until we get past midnight. In South Carolina, we're not talking a lot of snow either. We're talking more ice than anything. But when you get north of 85, there will be accumulating snow in the afternoon on Friday. So I expect schools are going to be closing on Friday across this area, but I don't know for sure. Myrtle Beach, Florence, Charleston, I don't think we're going to have any major issues. Same for Wilmington. Fayetteville will be a little bit dicier, and certainly the Sandhills region will be even dicier than that. As you can see here, this cold air hangs on quite a bit longer Friday evening in upstate parts of South Carolina and then heading between Florence and Fayetteville. Here's a look at our snow expectation right now. From the NAM model, and this only runs up through 1 in the morning, so there'll be a little bit more after this. But generally speaking, only a couple of inches in upstate South Carolina. Atlanta could see a little bit, but we have to get to about Rome and Helen, Georgia, and then points northward into the mountains before we really see much. It's more of an ice challenge than anything else across this area, as you can see here on our ice forecast. 0.41 in Atlanta proper. Columbia will see a little bit of ice, but when you get north of Columbia, closer to Rock Hill, 0.3 of an inch of ice. Fayetteville could also have significant ice. Lawrence, those areas here, Union County, all could see some substantial ice. Finally, let's get to the mid-Atlantic, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. And the dam is going to shut off before we get to the end of this storm, but you're going to see snow moving in the morning in western North Carolina, and then spreading into southwestern Virginia and into the Piedmont Triad around lunchtime. The afternoon, things will start to get snow covered, but at night is when the problems will be more substantial across much of North Carolina, especially Raleigh and Rocky Mount on northward here. Richmond gets into the snow as well later in the afternoon, and especially at night here. Virginia Beach could see some snow as well before a transition. So despite the low track coming up the coast here, there'll be enough cold air for this to bring us a decent amount of snow and then ice. West Virginia, I think this is all going to be snow. It'll be about a 12-hour event. Same for Northern Virginia, Maryland, and into the mid-Atlantic region. And here's a look at, let me bring the snow back. Here's a look at some of our totals here, just so you all get an idea, because I live in Raleigh and everybody's asking me how much we're going to get. So between now and 1 a.m. Saturday, which will be midway through the storm, we could see close to a ½ inch in Raleigh, an inch in Greensboro, and a few inches in western North Carolina. More so in West Virginia and in western Virginia. Now, there'll be more after this. We could see a couple more inches falling, so I'm not going to show you much more past that. But I do want to show you the NAM 12K here for total snow totals, because as we move into the mid-Atlantic region, and actually into the Carolinas, you'll see this actually runs another 24 hours. And here, our totals are a little bit higher. We get into Virginia, 3 to maybe 4 inches of snow here. Let's see if I can bring up the 32K. I guess I can't. But freezing rain amounts, again, not a lot in Virginia. This is more going to be of a challenge from Atlanta on up into the upstate of South Carolina, Charlotte area, Hickory, over to Asheboro, Siler City, Raleigh, Durham could have power outages, all the way up into the Dismal Swamp area here of Virginia. At the coast, I think we could see a little freezing rain, but I just don't think this is going to be a major storm. So I'll show you the European as well, since I just showed you one model. Here's the European, and you can see it holds on to the cold a little bit longer. So the ice threat is a little farther south, and it's more snow here for Raleigh, Durham, and Virginia Beach, but it's moving more quickly at this point. So when you get farther north into Virginia and then up into the mid-Atlantic and eventually the Northeast, this really isn't going to be a big storm for you. We're going to see a few inches of snow, which could be higher in the mountains, but that's really it. Behind this storm system, we're pretty quiet next week. We have shots of cold coming, but we don't have a major storm signal for a while. Now, when we get to about Inauguration Day on the 20th, things could get a little bit more interesting, as there is going to be a transition out of the negative NAO, which means we could have something in the east to deal with. And that could line up with MLK Day and Inauguration Day as we get moisture that comes out of the Gulf of Mexico. Who knows? Maybe they're going to change that name. Who knows? But yeah, we've got a lot of dry air in the way of this system, but we also have a lot of moisture on the Gulf Coast here as dew points surge into the 60s in New Orleans. But look at that, 60 in New Orleans and 17 in Tallahassee. So it's a very fine line between a big rain event and just a chilly, damp setup here. Rain totals will be pretty high. Southeast Texas, 1 inch to 2 inches, maybe 3 in Galveston. Louisiana gets drenched. Southern Mississippi gets drenched. Between 1 to 3 inches of rain expected here. And heading farther to the east, those amounts do come down as our system loses some of its punch. And if you're in Florida, yes, the Western Panhandle is going to see quite a bit of rain, but the peninsula will not. We're generally just going to see some showers here heading into the end of the week and into the weekend. Again, we're looking at this pattern here. Trough lifts away. Another trough comes in and keeps us cold. But you'll see things split into two here. We have a piece that gets stuck in the southwest and another piece that progresses oh my goodness, please help me here, quickly into the northeast and then just stays cold. It spins, it's blocked. So Eastern Canada is going to see quite a bit of weather here. It'll be cold in the northeast, but we don't have a way to link the two together. Eventually, we see some ridging in the east, and then we've got a bigger potential problem around the 20th of January here, 20th to 21st. So we're going to have more of that coming up, but again, we can look at all the models in the world, but they're going to change here. This is the 20th on the GFS from 12Z. It's got a decent storm on the 19th and 20th here. If we look at the European, it looks different, but it has a storm. If we look at the AI, it's a little bit slower to bring this up. Actually, it's got one piece on the 18th and then a break and then another piece on the 21st. So they're all screaming at something here around MLK Day, but the details are just way too uncertain at this point. So I'll be talking about that next week as we start to get closer to that potential event. But right now, I'm praying that everybody stays safe in the storm affected area of the South. I pray for the safety of everybody in California dealing with the wildfires. And I'm a Christian man, and I truly do believe in the power of prayer and the power of giving everything over to God. Just the ability to be courageous and to do bold things because God has given us that ability. Joshua 1:9 says, "Have I not commanded you to be strong and of good courage? Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." And I think a lot of us struggle with this, whether or not you're a Christian like I am, because we all think that we are here to be able to try to do everything that we can. But I've learned that trusting in God gives us a special power, and that is the power of reconciliation with Christ. It is the power to let God fight our battles for us and not have to do it ourselves. We have to make a courageous decision to follow him, but he will do the rest for us. And all we have to do is petition for his assistance because of what has been done for us. So if you have any prayer requests, I will spend some time in prayer for you, but I expect to be back on here later tomorrow. Hope everybody has a great night. See you all soon.